It is Monday, December the 16th, and I'm Rob, also known as that developer dad, and we're building apps with C Sharp and .NET. Today, we are going to get out of application framework world and back into actually implementing use cases on the administrative subsystem that is going to be taking care of making sure that when somebody signs up for a subscription to the DM's familiar, I don't have to jump up out of bed or get into my phone and start playing around in the Azure portal and all of that stuff. Excuse me. So that it just happens seamlessly as they sign up, and it makes sure that my customers, when they do sign up, can start using the goodies in the application almost immediately without me having to intervene. So far we've got load or create customer profile pretty much set up. And I feel like there's something missing in here. Oh, yeah, it's making sure that an identity has been added to the groups that they need to be a part of based on their subscription type. But we're going to get into that maybe during Store Customer Profile. Well, no, not during Store Customer Profile, because this is going to be very, very slim, narrow type operation that I'm going to be doing here. Definitely when we get into managed customer subscription, but I am going to need to add a reconcile user groups to the load or create in the case where we have to create a brand new profile from scratch, where somebody has just signed up, they've created their identity, and we want to add them to the free users group over in Microsoft Entra. So for today, though, this one's going to be a fairly simple, fairly slim change. And I think we do want to start off with setting up or making the alterations to the interface that I need to make here so that we can call these things asynchronously and are actually dealing with a request response type conversation instead of just a raw, here's the customer profile, send me back either a customer profile, or exception type pattern. Because as much as I like this, I don't love it. And customer profile, like the request response pattern I've been using with payloads and such, I like it, but I don't love it. I've got other problems with it, but this is actually a much more flexible way of doing things. So the very first thing we got to do is, I think we could probably just, oh wait, customer profile request. Let's take a look at what customer profile request looks like. So the payload is just the user ID here. So I think I need to change the name of the file first off, rename, and it's going to be load account profile request. And I'm going to change the symbol name to load account profile request. Save it, and let's make sure we've got it over in here. Okay, load or create customer profile async, load account profile request. Good. And before I go any further, I need to create a new branch from main. I'm going to call it feature / store account profile. Boop. Okay, and we should have all of our changes. We sure do. Good. We can hide that for now. So customer account manager, blah, 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 load or create customer profile async. And I'm going to change the name of customer profile response, or maybe I'm not, because it's just an op response of customer profile. We can recycle that. We can absolutely recycle that. And right now, these operation requests and operation responses don't have a ton of stuff in them. Like really just, well, no, we do have a good bit of metadata in here. So we've got workload ID, workload name. And the workload ID is the instance of this execution of a workload. The workload name, of course, is the conceptual name of the workload within the system, operation name, invocation time, etc., etc. And then, of course, we've got the payload. And that's about it for the operation request. For the operation response, let's go back over to our interface, go to the definition, and let's just take a look at operation response. We've got a list of errors. It carries the request. Whether we have warnings or errors in our errors collection, an ability to add errors, whether it has an error kind, and to clear the error kind. And there's a little reminder for myself to pull that over to the framework repository later. And then this is it. Just a successful payload. And that's that. And we can actually reuse the customer profile response, I think, for all of these. Maybe. We might have to do something a little different for managed subscription, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So for now, what I'm going to do first off is rename this to async. And I'm going to change this to a task of customer profile response. And I think we're going to need to add a new contract. It's going to be a class, and it is going to be save account profile request. All right. And it is going to inherit operation request of customer profile, because that's what it's going to receive. And we'll implement the abstract class. Operation name is private read-only string, operation name. Let's give that second N uppercase equals save account profile. And there we go. Now this probably also wants a constructor. And I don't need the workload name. Yeah, I do. Let's see how I'm doing it over on load account profile request. Okay, so workload name, payload. Yeah. Okay, good. Excuse me. All right. So yeah, that's perfectly legit. And we're just passing off to the base. And because there's no special logic we need in here, I can just bring that up here. Save, operation name becomes operation name. And let's make sure it looks roughly similar. Ah, yes. You can see here that I'm proxying through to the payload with a hardened property name here. And that feels like a pretty good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Optional helper pass through to make this easier to use in the manager that will receive it. And there we go. Easy peasy. Save that. Boop. And here's IAccountManager. This is becoming save account profile request. Change the name of this to request. Saveroo. I'm going to come over here because I totally broke my component by doing that. So we've got all of this stuff. Hashtag region. Dependencies. And region. Dependencies. Let's just shrink that up so we don't have to look at it, unless we absolutely have to. So here's my constructor. It's doing the things. We're good here. Loader create customer profile async. This is mostly implemented. I'm going to keep this open just for reference. Save. Manage. Here's store. Let's fix this up. Public async task of customer profile response. This becomes save account profile request. There we go. Customer profile response. And we're just going to initialize that, passing in the request object, because our responses always include our requests. It helps with correlation later. Return response. All right. Now, customer profile equals request.profile if profile is null. Profile to store was null. It's an error. We're just going to ship it on back right away. Otherwise, we're not going to need to use the account builder here because okay, now it's just back to complaining about the await. All we need to do here really is, pardon me, convert the incoming customer profile to a account resource. And I can't remember the exact type name for that. So let's take a look. The identity stuff, we can't change that really ever. Although, no, if we decide to make that change later, we will. So let's find our user account access abstractions, and it is user account resource is what we need to turn it into. So user account resource equals well, we're not going to get it. All we're going to do is we're going to convert it. And yeah, user account resource, user account equals main object mapper dot map entities. What are you complaining about? There we go. We need to map from customer profile to user account access. As you can see here, and we just provide the profile. Simplest form. Well, we don't have a store user account async, so that's fine. Dot save user account async user account. Now, this will work a-okay. Let's play with it. Tests. Or it ought to work a-okay. Come down to Program CS. We'll mess around with the geek profile. Console.WriteLine. Now let's change the display name and save it. Oops. Here we go. And we need to var save profile request equals new. And it just needs the workload name and the payload. So get rid of GeekDad user ID. Test, save. And I believe that's what I've done up here, yeah. So when I set up those, I'm just going to change those to test load. Save. Pardon me. And here's test save. We can push this back up to the same line there. My Explorer is a little chonky over here. And var save response equals await. Oh, no, this isn't async, so I have to do it manually. Dot StoreCustomerProfile async.result. If save response dot successful, profile saved successfully, dot write line, and dot clear error kind, has errors, has error kind, blah, blah, blah. I don't think we have a way to pull the error report off of these responses. Well, that's no fun. That's no fun at all. I guess we better take a look at that. And that stuff all lives in the IFX in the service model, operation response, request, errors.any. Add error, add errors. Public string array, error report. And instead of e.message, I am going to say e.toString. What's this complaining about? Nullability of reference types and value of type string array doesn't match target type of string. So let's go ahead and say it's an array of nullable strings. And in order to get that toString to work correctly, we actually have to run in and update or override that method on service error. What we're going to do severity error kind, site, message. I think I want to add some line breaks and maybe do some formatting here. Okay, so string builder SB equals new. We'll put the severity right at the top. Error kind, where it happened, the message. Return sb.toString. Save. Run back out to program CS, save response dot error report. For each nullable string, and console.writeLine, not error, and not there. Profile save failed. Yeah, that works. Right line, and just we'll add some separators. Report cache stats. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Let's drop a breakpoint right here. And see what we get. Now, I don't think this is quite complete, because if user account response dot, oh, we don't have that, dot item 2 is not equal to null. We'll just turn that into a service error here. Return the response. response.payload equals request.payload. We'll just repeat that back. Otherwise, we will response.payload equals customer profile updated equals, there we go, suppose we should do a null check. Pardon me. And var save result equals that. If save result equals null, I'm just going to throw here. Throw new exception. Return successfully, but had a null result. And we're going to say save result here because we know it's not null. Set the response payload to updated and return. So we've just added a little bit of error checking, a little bit of null checking to the result of that operation. We're updating the response from the manager with that updated instance. Let's save. And we'll drop in here. We'll put a breakpoint right there. And we'll build, and we had a build failure. Yes, I do mind. What's the issue? The async method lacks await operators and will run synchronously. What about my build failure? You silly goose. Oh. Oh gosh. Await. We'll let it do that. And we'll try rebuilding. I'm surprised that those warnings gave us problems. All right, what's the error here? This is gross. All projects are up to date. Warning has a known high severity vulnerability. I'll have to fix that up. SAS admin. A void or int returning entry point cannot be async. Oh, yeah, it's confused by that async void. So let's just do this. Dot result, spin up top. Get rid of this. Goodbye. Save. What's the problem complaining over here? Dereference of a possibly null. If Geek profile is not null. We'll do these subsequent tests. The heck are we? Here we are. Push those in another label. And then else. Geek profile is null. Here are the error messages. There. Save. Get rid of this breakpoint because it doesn't do anything anymore. Geek profile is absolutely not null here. And this is where we can drop that breakpoint. And rebuild. Looks like we're good. Engage. Yep. Wants my password. Okay. And we have hit this. We look down here, we see all the stuff that it's doing. Let's change the display name and save it. And all I'm doing is adding a space between geek and dad there. So we'll go boop, spin that into a save profile request. And so we've got all this stuff, this proxy thing that we're stepped into here. And this is going to get really annoying as I develop and as I'm stepping through stuff. So system.diagnostics dot debugger step through. Let's see if that improves the developer experience at all. Because I've stepped over and through all of that proxy stuff enough times that I'm pretty comfortable with it deciding that it's going to behave for me. So here's my method context. I should really do a debugger step through on these things. On method entry async. And we are now in our manager. Cool. I got to do a lot more decoration in between this morning and this afternoon's session here. So here's our response. We've got our profile. There's the display name that we're updating. Yeah. Profile is not null. Convert it over to a user account object. That all looks good. Oops, I just totally stepped over that. So the save. And item 2 is not null. Save result. We'll map it back to a profile. Set it on the response payload. Store customer profile async. We'll report the domain cache stats. And we're good. And we can see that sort of AirSats runtime cache up in the domain mapper is starting to accumulate things. It's cutting down on the total amount of reflection that we're having to do over time as we execute use cases and different kinds of transformations. And that's doing what I want it to do. So awesome. Let me pop open a Safari window and pull it over here and log into the Azure portal real quick. And we'll go into my table storage, choose a browser, and we can see this bottom row that I've got highlighted. There's our updated display name. So fantastic. That's great. Now that works well for a complete overwrite because that's what we did. Where that's going to bite us in the butt is when the incoming profile is only partial. It's not going to work real well for a patch. Not at all. So I wonder down here in my Azure table stuff, there's the abstractions. Oh, that's options. Don't need that. You can go bye-bye. Load user account async. Is this save? This is save user account async. So table client does upsert entity. I wonder. So it replaces the specified table entity of type user entity if it exists, and it creates the entity if it does not exist. All right. So what if the data that we have coming in is only partial? What if it's only the deltas or the changes that have been made? Start a new conversation. And I'm just going to start typing my question over on the other screen so I've got the actual code window to crib from here. So I see that with Azure Table Storage, I have a table client dot upsert entity async. Hey, what's up, Scott? My coding is going really, really well. I introduced some pretty serious efficiency code, not necessarily execution efficiency, but developer efficiency code last week that is saving me. It's already saving me ridiculous amounts of time. I'll point you to it in a minute. I'm just querying Microsoft Copilot about something on the table client API. And it'll work well for fully replacing or creating an object. Is there a method on the table client that will perform a patch-like operation on an object that already exists, where it applies only the incoming deltas? Microsoft Copilot, I just use, I go to Bing and I hit the AI button. Merge option to update only the properties that are present in the new entity, effectively applying the deltas. And this is exactly what I want to do. So here's a quick example in C#, partition key, row key, yeah, this is super handy. And unlike GPT, like OpenAI's GPT or Claude from Anthropic, I don't run up against the daily limits for queries as quickly with Microsoft's Copilot. Whereas with Claude or OpenAI, they put a pretty tight limit on how much you're allowed to do before you to try and get you to pay for their services. But this is just open to the public, and for, I want to say, 80% of my use cases is more than sufficient. So in here, this is saying that I can, yeah, the $25 a month GPT Plus is pretty nice to have, especially if your employer is buying it for you. In my case, I'll pay $10 a month for GitHub Copilot because it does save me a bunch of time, but I'm not ready to start paying 20 plus a month for other models. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I don't rely on it that much, but it is a big time saver. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do an experiment. But before I do this experiment, I am going to check in, updates the contract definitions for, what's the method name? StoreCustomerProfile. Yep. For StoreCustomerProfile use case, and implements that method. Commit, push, and I'm going to do an experiment. inside the table provider. So here we've got upsert. I've got my table client. Save step, convert to entity, user account dot to entity. And what I actually want to do here this works fine when we're creating or fully replacing an entity. We may sometimes want to do partial updates. And we get into a bit of a philosophical discussion here. Instead, I'm going to have to think deeply on this. This is going to require much more thought than I'd initially imagined. Let's leave this alone for the time being. Save. Good Lord, that cat. Yeah, I'm going to have to ponder this scenario quite a bit, actually. Because it's looking like it's going to be way, 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 way more complicated than I had thought when I was like, oh, I'll just implement patch instead. So, or I'll implement patch in addition to post and put. But I'm implementing those HTTP verbs internally and hiding that tech stuff out on the main API. So the question here is, where would that logic go? And how best should I do some kind of apply? And that feels an awful lot like compute and some hefty logic that is going to be domain specific. And is really only going to matter when it's coming from client to manager to resource and not resource to manager to outside world. And I feel like I need a Delta engine or something like that, like an apply deltas type facility. And that sounds an awful lot like an engine to me. And I'm going to think that through and come back with my thoughts on it this afternoon. Scott, I will send you a Discord message with the URL to the GitHub repository with the time saver codes or code that I've spun up very shortly here. But I think the introduction of this patching engine or the apply deltas engine or whatever is going to require a bit more thought on my part before I just say, all right, this needs to be a vital part of my architecture. Let's spec it, add it, implement it. And I'm gonna do that thinking in between now and the next session and report back with what I think I'm doing. I really want to focus on getting the rest of the actual business use cases implemented this week. And if while I'm implementing those, I determine that this Delta detection and application engine is necessary, we'll go ahead and build it at that point. Basically, it'll turn from a thought in my head into yeah, this is a good idea to yes, I need this at some point, or and if it does, we'll go ahead and do that. If it doesn't turn into a yes, I need this and I can apply this in other places, then I will not build out that kind of engine. So yeah, Scott, thanks for jumping in and saying hi. I'll send you the URL to my framework stuff in a few minutes, and I will see the rest of you at the next stream or video. Take care of yourselves and happy coding.